Meeting with a bunch of people here. I can't talk. Bye.
Jamie will be here in 2 minutes.
Can't wait.
This down
The
here.
other Jamie, because I'm never late.
Don't forget, no questions off of you. No questions.
Turn off. Okay, here. How you doing?
You're not live, Carl.
We are. As soon as that's on, we
Oh, wait.
What's up?
What's that? Yeah.
I'm gonna.
Okay.
Okay. Jim, we're gonna carefully look at the people in their standing. I'm gonna get it squared away out front after you introduce.
I can strike that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you can introduce it, and then I want to make sure we get, who all the parties are. 'Cause last time.
No,
We're going to do the
that's okay.
first watch first.
Yeah, good.
That'll take a few minutes. She's having a hard time.
I think that I put it on there. I think I thought that this was just adoption. I don't know. It's okay. We'll figure it out. I've been in a fog. I'll make a mention.
Women here.
A little bit. Carl, you guys are looking good. Really. Jeez. Thank you. Getting younger, you guys.
Thank you.
George looked good. I haven't seen George for a while. Say, what? Doing something right.
I hope so.
I don't know, Tony. It's been more than 2 minutes.
Jim Ramos, I don't know.
Yeah, I would just say this.
I had breakfast with him the other day. I knew you were coming. And
Yeah.
Yeah, have everybody, all the appropriate officials present at the available meetings.
She might be having trouble finding a parking spot.
there's a button. I can find it. Okay. Ready?
Ready.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Before we start our regular meeting, we have two public hearings. We're going to do the first one is a public hearing for a liquor license transfer for First Watch Restaurants Incorporated. So we have a representative from First Watch.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christine Pomella, and I'm the Director of Operations that oversees 3 of the First Watch restaurants in the greater Pittsburgh area. We're very excited, and hopefully you will be too, to approve our liquor license. A little bit about First Watch. We are a breakfast, brunch, and lunch restaurant. We open at 7. We close at 2:30. Even though we will have alcohol on premise, hopefully, they will only be 6 signature cocktails. They will be pre-made in our kitchen by our line cooks, so there will not be any free pouring. All of our front of house team members and our back of house team members would be required to complete a Serve Safe alcohol training program. And if you have any questions, I'm available.
Well, you answer my question if you're going to extend your hours. I guess you're not going to extend your hours?
We're not going to extend our hours at this point in time.
Do you have any plans in the future to add a bar or anything?
No, it will all be dining room service for this particular location. Some of our newer locations, they are opening with a bar, which is really more like a counter
Okay.
versus a bar. First come, first served seating.
Are there any other any other nearby First Watches that have a liquor license?
Yes, currently we just opened the liquor part of our business at our Century 3 location, which is in Baldwin. And when we opened the South Hills Village restaurant in January, that opened. That particular restaurant does have a bar in it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? That's it. Thank you
you.
very much. Okay, our next public hearing is a public hearing concerning CU-4-22 Herms Gas Well Development, a proposed unconventional oil and gas well, tax parcel 4902000001, 5476 Logan Ferry Road, excuse me, RR, zoning, oil and gas overlay district. Mr. Stivic.
Good evening. My name's Bill Sittig, and I'm representing the municipality. And in order to sort of frame the case, Jim Morrison's going to introduce that, but I think beforehand, if we could, anybody that may make any statements whatsoever, if we could all have everybody sworn now at one time, if you could please stand and be sworn.
Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. Next, I think Jamie wants to make a statement about her involvement.
Yes, I will be recusing myself from all of these proceedings. My husband has taken a job with Babs Calland, who represents one of the parties. So I will remove myself and return when the hearing's over.
All right. Thanks, Jamie. With that, Jim?
Want to introduce the applicant?
Sure. Blaine, if you want to go to the microphone, please introduce yourself and the interest in what you're seeking here this evening.
Again, my name is Blaine Lucas. I'm with the law firm Babs Calland. We're outside legal counsel to the applicant, Olympus Energy, LLC. The subject of the hearing tonight is Olympus's conditional use application for what's known as the Hermes well pad. Oil and gas drilling is authorized as a conditional use in the oil and gas recovery overlay district in which this property is located. Olympus intends to initially drill 8 wells over the course of 2 trips. There may be possible additional wells in the future, but we understand that we would come back to council for approval of those. So our request tonight is limited to those 8 wells. To the extent it's applicable here, Olympus is also requesting a conditional use for the major excavation grading that would take place in conjunction with this. The Planning Commission reviewed this over a several-month period. There was also substantial dialogue between representatives of Olympus and its consultants and municipal staff and consultants for the municipality. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the conditional use and the related land development and 2 related waivers for landscaping and your sound ordinance, subject to a laundry list of conditions, 25 of them with a number of subparts that were there was dialogue back and forth with municipal staff on those, and we'll discuss those a little later in more detail. So we have a number of presenters here tonight, 3 I think, but we also have a couple other individual representatives of the company available should questions come up that are within their domain. So that's our introduction at this point, and I don't know what your next step is going to be.
Well, before we get in the case in chief, I don't know, Jim, if you want to start now or if we just want to identify and make sure we get all the parties. We want to have whoever has party status here so we can handle each of the witnesses. So I know, counsel, you're here. So if you could please introduce yourself and who you're representing.
So my name's Tim Fitchett. I'm here with Fair Shake Environmental Legal Services. I represent Protect PT, which is a nonprofit organization that works to protect the interests of citizens in Westmoreland County and Allegheny County surrounding oil and gas development. We do have witnesses or standing witnesses and members of the organization that live with, one is contiguous to the property boundary and the other lives within a half mile. So at a time that is necessary, we can show those witnesses, and based on that, we would.
Yeah, thanks. So I think before we get into that, I think it's good to establish that so we can just put to bed the standing, because we did this before and then we had to identify where the most proximate resident member was. I just want to know, is there anyone else that you're aware of, or is there anyone else in the audience that's seeking party status, or basically these opposing interests going to be represented by you?
As far as I'm aware,
is there anybody else that's seeking direct party status or intends to have seek rights to cross-examine or participate on an individual basis? Okay, great. That makes it easy for us, Tim, so we can just look to you whenever we're going to do this. So I assume, Blaine, are you interested in establishing the standing and having the folks identify their locations of their properties?
Sure, I think it would be helpful, just clarity for the record, to identify those individuals and where their properties are. I do have a map, aerial map that shows the location of the pad. Perhaps if these individuals could come up, identify themselves, and mark on the map with a notation where they reside and note their last name, just so we have a clarity for the record as to who these individuals are.
That's totally your call. You guys just trying to put this to bed. It looks like you're ready to address the issue, and it's not going to be one. So however you're comfortable establishing that.
Then I can start by asking Ms. Tony Ash.
It's Tony Ash. I live at 3785 Sardis Road, Plumboro, 15235. 39, sorry.
Mr. Blaine is going to show you a map.
Mark what we'll as Olympus Exhibit I, because we have a bunch of other exhibits previously identified. Ma'am, could you spell your last name for the record?
ASH.
Okay. And if you could, I've placed before you what's been marked as Olympus Exhibit I, a felt blue pen. If you could just mark where your property is.
I don't know. Where is it? Where's Sardis Road?
Just off the record, this is Logan Ferry Road.
Well, I live off of Sardis, not Logan's Ferry. It crosses over Sardis.
So this would be.
So there's a stop sign here.
No. Oh, no. Here it is, right here.
If you could just put an X and
on the
just
property?
write your last name.
On this property?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Fitchett,
Yes.
Ms. Ash's property is the most proximate. Is this the one that's nearest the site,
It is directly adjacent to the property.
directly adjacent?
Based on what you noted, we have no objections or standing.
Okay. And I don't know if you want to go to somebody else in case Ms. Ash isn't familiar. It's up to you. I don't want to necessarily limit you to one property owner. So if you want to get another one up to have backup, that's fine too. However you want to approach it.
Is Loretta Susan Iannotti? Is she in the audience? All right, fantastic. Ms. Ash, thank you. You can take a seat. And
I am a member of...
yeah, we understand. He is not
Can I
objected.
object to this?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I will call you back up to make sure that your comments are on the record. But for the moment, this is a very limited piece of it. So, Ms. Iannotti, if you could step up and state and spell your name and address for the record.
My name is Susan Iannotti, S-U-S-A-N, Iannotti, I-O-N-A-D-I. I live at 5106 Hemlock Lane in Murraysville, 15668.
And can you locate your home on this map?
Okay, it's off at Logan's Ferry, and it's you have Harvest Road on here, or I don't see it. Where would it be? Yeah, you kind of. Yeah, I'm back by Respironics. Okay, Respironics and.
So just to try to orient, is your property located off of the map?
It might be. I don't know. It's not on here where I see it.
How about, can you just state your address for the record? And sure. Mr. Lucas has already not objected to our other standing witness, and that I think should be sufficient.
Okay. It's 5106 Hemlock Lane. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We would note an objection to Ms. Iannotti standing because for a moment, for reasons I'll note momentarily, I've marked as Olympus Exhibit J and would ask that Mr. Ryan Daly, who will be our principal witness tonight, come up to the microphone. Mr. Daly is, what is Exhibit J compared with Exhibit I?
So Exhibit J is the exact same map that is presented on Exhibit I. However, there is a half-mile radius shown from the edge of the well pad that depicts all the properties that are within a half-mile of the well pad.
And is based on a description from Ms. Iannotti, is property located within that half-mile radius?
No, she's not.
Where is she located vis-a-vis that map?
The property would be located off the page to the south.
We'll get to this a little later. Would her property be on the truck route?
No, I don't believe so.
So we have no objection to Ms. Ash, but we do object to Ms. Iannotti. The general rule, and provide your counsel with a memo on this. You get beyond a half mile away and you're not individually impacted any more than the general public, you have not established standing. In light of Ms. Ash's standing, we don't object to her or to Protect PT, but we do to Ms. Iannotti.
All right, it's noted. We're not going to rule on it. We'll note that we have standing via Ms. Ash and her being a member of the organization, and we're ready to proceed. And all good health with Ms. Ash, and she can stay with us, and we don't have to cross that later. So thanks, everybody, for your patience. That's some legal housekeeping, but it'll help us to get to the merits of this much more quickly. With that, Blaine, would you like to get an outline or a summary from the municipality? So are you ready otherwise to present witnesses at this point?
Yes.
Okay. Jim, were you going to present? No? Any statement? Does the municipality have anything to present as an outline?
Jim Morrison, Municipality of Murraysville. Application was made by Olympus for land development and conditional use. For the purpose of the hearing tonight, it's a conditional use hearing. Application was received in June of this year, went before the Planning Commission in July and August, and in November. At the November meeting, the Planning Commission reviewed the material, made a recommendation, and forwarded that recommendation to Murraysville Council, and we can proceed from there.
And this hearing was duly noticed?
This
of the
hearing was
MPC?
duly advertised as a conditional use hearing. Property was posted.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. With that, Blaine, I think we're ready to have you proceed with your case in chief. Anything else, Mr. Fidget? We good to go?
Hopefully, to move this along from a housekeeping perspective, we have some sets of documents we want to introduce into the record, and I think I'll just do that all now so that they're already in the record. Exhibit A is the application, which we've only brought one full set of. Multiple sets were provided to the municipality previously, and there are two binders with various subparts. We will ask that they be included in the record, and I'm sure the court reporter will be thrilled to hear that I'm giving these to her. So.
Okay, let's do this. I don't think Mr. Fitchett has any objection to the application, subject to his being able to review and confirm that that was in fact the submittal.
We also have, again, more just paper the record, but not to peruse through. Exhibit D, which is the updated stormwater plan, and Exhibit E, which is the updated traffic impact study.
Blaine, if you could, for the record, is there an updated date so that we're sure that we can connect the dots?
The Exhibit D, the updated stormwater study, is most recent date is September 2022. It has Mr. Daly's stamp dated September 30, 2022. And then the updated traffic impact study is dated October 2022. And
so you indicated you're going to ask that these all be admitted,
yes.
Right? Mr. Fitchett, are you? No objection. Thank you. So I have thus far, I have A, D, E, I, and J. Okay?
Yes, that's correct. I also have a packet with some additional exhibits and some excerpts from Exhibit A. Again, testimony is just going to be focused on a limited number of maps and documents from those. So I have a set of these for each of the council members, the court reporter, you, Mr. Siddig, and Mr. Fitchett.
And what have you marked that exhibit, Blaine?
I'll get to that momentarily. What we have here are, these are excerpts plus from Exhibit A plus some additional exhibits. The first two drawings are from Exhibit A6, the application. Mr. Daly will be testifying with respect to those. Then there are two documents after that
Just before, Mr. Lucas, before we go any further, do you want these separately marked, or are we just going to reference them within A?
They're just referenced within A, but just for convenience of council to not have to be rooting through a large binder, we've placed those there.
All right.
The same thing, the next two documents are what's called the Hermes Well Pad 72-hour ambient survey. This is Exhibit A7A, which again is from the binder. And then after that, there's the sound impact assessment from the Hermes Well Pad, which was also from the original application, and it's Exhibit A7B. Then the balance of the packet are new exhibits. Exhibit C is an updated landscaping plan. Exhibit F are two drawings that are the road grout, and we'll have testimony on all these items.
If we could go back to C, just a question. Is this part of any submittal to this point to the municipality?
It wasn't part of the original submittal. It's an updated landscaping plan that Mr. Daly will testify about, that during the review process with the municipality, the landscaping plan was updated in response to some comments that were received.
Understood, and not yet reviewed by the municipality.
I don't know if it has been reviewed.
All right, thanks.
Then Exhibit F are the haul routes coming in from two different directions, and these are updated and supersede what was in the original application. And Mr. Daly and another witness will testify in more detail on those routes, because they changed in light of feedback from the Planning Commission and from municipal staff and consultants. Then Exhibit G, there was a request, and Mr. Rosendahl will testify briefly about this. There was a request for some of the ambient data that was taken at the Titan well pad while it was under development.
I could go back to F. I have two exhibits that are each marked F.
That's correct. Well,
F is a two-page exhibit?
It's a two-page exhibit. As will be explained, one has traffic coming in from the south and one has traffic coming in from the north.
Okay, got G.
And then G is the monitoring data from Titan that Mr. Rosendahl will briefly discuss. And then finally, Exhibit H were the conditions that were approved by the Planning Commission in conjunction with the recommended approval of both the conditional use and the land development. So, and we'll be referring back to all these, but we just thought it's much easier than having to flip around a lot of paper. That council members would have everything right at their fingertips, as would Mr. Fitchett.
I may have missed it. Is there a B as in boy?
No, there's not. Numbering is not one of our strong suits. I thought about using it and decided to leave it out.
Tim, I don't know if you have any objections or you need any time to review anything, to reserve anything, just let me know. He's asking all this to be introduced. You obviously get as much time as you need to review it. If you're uncomfortable, if you're okay, not objecting, just let us know. I assume this is the first time you've seen some of this information, so. All right, we'll admit them, subject to you having a chance if you find anything that's that you object to and you want to raise that, but otherwise they'll be admitted unless we hear from you.
With that, we'll get down to testimony. Ryan, are you okay using that mic? Okay. Olympus would like to call Mr. Ryan Daly. Ryan, could you state and spell your full name for the record?
Ryan, R-Y-A-N, Daly, D-A-I-L-E-Y.
And by whom are you employed?
I'm a project manager with Civil and Environmental Consultants.
And what are your professional credentials?
I'm a licensed professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as well as a certified floodplain manager.
And what is your involvement in the Hermes well pad?
So again, I was the project manager with CEC. We did the site design and a lot of the environmental permitting associated with the site.
So if you could, let's first go to drawing SPO2, which is Exhibit A6 from your packet. It's the first sheet in the packet. What is that document?
So this exhibit is an overview map of the site. It shows the full property and the location of the proposed well pad. As we mentioned, to start, the property is zoned RR district as well as the oil and gas overlay district. It is owned by the Larry Mills family. Total parcel size is approximately 147 acres. The property is split between Murraysville and Plum Borough, so the county line bisects the property, and that is shown on this exhibit as the heavy dash line that runs in a north-south orientation through the middle of the property. However, as shown, the proposed well pad and access road are located entirely within the municipality of Murraysville.
Mr. Daly, are there any activities, site activities, land development activities occurring in Plum Borough?
So there are going to be some minor grading and ENS, erosion and sedimentation control, BMPs that will be on the Plum side. Olympus has discussed the project with Plum, and they made the determination that since the entirety of the well pad and the access road and all the operations associated with the oil and gas development will be in Murraysville, that Plum will just require a grading permit for the minor grading and ENS controls.
And the owner of the property is whom?
It's the Mills family.
And the Mills family execute a cooperation and surface use agreement with Olympus?
Yes.
And that was included in the application binders, is that correct?
Correct.
Again, what road will the site access from?
So Logan Ferry Road cuts again through the middle of the property in a north-south orientation. The access road will come off of Logan Ferry Road near where the Municipal Authority of Westmoreland County access road is located currently.
Does this drawing also show, trace out the applicable setback requirements under the municipality's zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Can you walk through those?
Sure. So the first setback requirement under the oil and gas ordinance is that the nearest portion of the outer boundary of the proposed well pad must be located more than 750 feet from a protected structure. Now, in this case, Olympus did obtain setback waivers from two properties located directly east of the pad. So when we take those into account, the nearest protected structure is actually located approximately 1,200 feet to the northeast, generally in this direction.
Are there any other setback requirements? What are some of the other? What are the other nearby properties or protected structures?
Right. So the next closest property, or the next closest protected structure, would be approximately 1,400 feet directly to the east. And then if we head around to the north, the closest protected structure would be 1,800 feet. To the west is over 2,100 feet away. And to the southwest, the nearest protected structure is 1,500 feet away from the edge of the well pad.
Are there any other setback requirements under the ordinance, and does this site meet those?
Yes, the site meets them. The second requirement is that all temporary and permanent structures, equipment, and materials must be located more than 350 feet from protected structures. And again, in all cases, there are no protected structures within 350 feet of the well pad or of the access road. Even the properties to the east, which they have the waivers from, are over 480 feet from the access road. And then finally, the last setback requirement is that the activities must be 300 feet from recreation areas. And in this case, the closest recreation area we've identified is over 6,000 feet away, and that's a park in Plum. On the Murraysville side, it's approximately 8,000 feet, so over a mile and a half, to the Tomer Reserve property, and again, 8,500 feet to the McGinnis Reserve in Murraysville.
Now, if we could now, let's go to the haul route, which there are two drawings marked as Exhibit F.
Mr. Lucas, before, on the setbacks, the 750 setback, in particular, the two waivers, are they part of the record?
The waivers are, Mr. Daly, the waivers are included in the application pack, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's any objection, any question about the waivers.
I do have some, but I can reserve all of
Okay.
All right, so the board we have in front of us now is one of the proposed haul routes. As we mentioned first thing.
If we could, for the board, these are the updated haul routes that which are Exhibit F within your packet. So Ryan will be talking about both of them. So Ryan, actually, start with the other one.
Start with the other one. So there are two haul routes proposed to this site, both of which have been or were revised as part of the coordination with the Planning Commission and with the township's traffic engineer. The first exhibit we have in front of us depicts the haul route coming in from the south. So this would show vehicles coming from Route 22, following Route 286 to the north through Plum, up to the intersection with State Route 380/400. At that point, they would make a left to turn into State Route 380, come down to the stop sign with Logan Ferry Road, make the right onto Logan Ferry, and then up to the proposed entrance. And vehicles leaving the site would follow that same route to get back to Route 22.
Hey, it's an alternative route if the vehicles are coming from the other direction. And the drawing you've now placed under the screen, that is the second map as part of Exhibit F.
Right, so this exhibit shows vehicles coming from the north and from the east along State Route 380. So they would follow State Route 380 to the same intersection as they did coming from the south. At this time, they would make the right-hand turn to stay on Route 380 to the stop sign at Logan Ferry Road, make the right on Logan Ferry, and travel up to the access road entrance. And vehicles leaving in that direction would follow the same route.
We're going to have another witness. We'll get into this much more detail, but Olympus is proposing, or is it not, a number of improvements along these haul routes. Is that correct?
That's correct, including widening the turn at the stop sign with Logan Ferry Road, and then additionally intersection improvements at the intersection with Route 286 and 380.
And those will include, those improvements at that intersection will include a traffic signal, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll have another witness that will get into all that in much more detail, but we wanted to orient the council on that. Let's go now and talk about the specific site plan. And for the council's packet, this would be the second drawing in your packet. Exhibit is an excerpt from Exhibit A, A6.
All right, so this drawing, the SP04 drawing, is a more detailed exhibit that shows some of the site design components of the proposed well pad. Again, the access road entrance comes off of Logan Ferry Road. The first 50 feet of that entrance would be paved asphalt. The access road, the remainder of the access road would be gravel, approximately 24 feet wide and 1,300 feet long to get to the well pad. There is additional pull-off areas along the access road if trucks ever needed to pull off there. That would also be used for a guard shack when they have active operations on the well pad. The well pad itself, again, will be gravel cover. It's approximately 350 feet wide by 520 feet long. There'll be a 2-foot high earthen berm the entire way around the perimeter of the well pad. And then this extra bump out that you see in the western corner of the pad, that will be used to support the permanent production facilities that tie into the pipeline. As far as stormwater management is concerned on this site, we do have a variety of stormwater best management practices proposed. So we have a rain garden proposed south of the entrance that would control stormwater runoff from the first couple hundred feet of access road. Then we have 2 other managed release concept BMPs located along the main portion of the access road. And then we have a wet pond proposed below the well pad that will control all the runoff from the well pad itself. Additionally, some other features on the site, we have permanent stockpiles proposed for any topsoil at the site or excess spoils when they grade the site. And then we have a variety of stormwater conveyance features and E&S controls located downslope of the earthwork operations. All those features are included in the E&S permit that is currently under review with the PADEP, and those features were also included with our submittal to the township, which have been reviewed by the township engineer. As far as security at the site is concerned, as I mentioned, when they do have active operations on the pad, they will have 24/7 security at the site. Following that, when they go into the full production stage, there will be permanent chain link fencing around the entire perimeter of the well pad, as well as around the stormwater BMPs. There will also be a locked gate near the access road entrance. That gate would be located far enough off the public road that trucks could pull in, unlock the gate without obstructing any traffic. Emergency responders would be given access to that gate at all times if they ever needed to access the site. Again, when they have active operations on the well pad, there will be a requirement to have temporary light plants on site. Those will be your standard telescoping light plants. They're generally approximately 20 feet tall, which is going to be lower than the sound walls that are proposed at this site. Again, those light plants, even with the sound walls in place, would be pointed downward and inward to the site to reduce and minimize any sort of glare outside of the pad. They would likely have one small light plant at the guard shack, but that light would be, again, pointed downward and inward to the site to avoid any glare to the properties to the east. When the drill rig is up, the tall derrick, that will have lights on it, what's known as halo lighting. That's a requirement for safety purposes. But again, those lights are pointed directly to the operations on the pad. And then finally, when they go into the final production stage, there is no permanent lighting that would be on a regular basis out there.
When you refer to permanent production, you're talking after the wells have been drilled, hydraulically fractured, are now flowing gas.
That's correct.
One of the documents in the packet is Exhibit C, which is the updated landscaping plan. Could you just provide an overview of what that shows?
Yes, so the drawing we have in front of us now is referred to as the C700 drawing. This is the revised landscaping plan that was supplied as part of our first response to the municipality's engineer's review letter. As we mentioned, first thing, we are requesting a modification to some of the landscaping requirements, and I'll walk you through kind of the justification for that. So the site is naturally screened from the south and from the west by existing forested vegetation as well as topography. So this area of the map where I'm pointing now is the high point, and it slopes down towards the well pad. So any properties located south or west of that area would be screened by existing topography. Similarly, anything off to the west would be screened by existing forested areas that are located to the west and south of the pad. So the landscaping plan we've prepared and we're presenting here tonight really focuses all the landscaping to the east and to the north side of the well pad to screen the project from off-site properties. So as part of that landscaping plan, we have proposed a variety of trees and shrubs. So we've proposed a total of 108 trees, as well as 307 shrubs. Now the ordinance requirement, based on the total development area, would be 161 trees. So we are requesting a reduction of 53 trees for this site. And the total number of shrubs that would be required would be 805 shrubs. So we are requesting a reduction of 492 or 498 shrubs for this site.
And your ordinance does have a provision that allows for that upon your discretion.
So again, just to kind of point out how we've laid out this landscaping to screen the site. If we start at the entrance here, we have a variety of trees and shrubs proposed around the stormwater BMP, as well as directly upslope of the BMP to cluster that area. And then the whole way down along the access road and the perimeter of our LOD, again, we have trees and shrubs proposed along the entire eastern frontage there. So that would screen the project from any vehicles traveling on Logan Ferry, as well as the properties to the east there. When we get down to the well pad, we do have a cluster of trees proposed between the access road and the well pad. Those actually sit up on a little high point in the site. So that'll screen the well pad, again, from anybody looking from the east. And then we have a row of trees and shrubs, again, proposed along the northern perimeter of the site for anybody looking down from the north.
What are the species of trees and shrubs that are proposed?
So we have 4 species of trees: red maple, white oak, white pine, and American holly. And then the shrubs, again, we have 4 shrubs. We have New Jersey tea, winterberry, ninebark, and arrowwood viburnum.
And we would note, although there aren't provisions for payments in lieu in your ordinance, that Olympus, and this is one of the conditions noted in the Planning Commission approval, Olympus is committed to making a donation of $41,500 to be used for landscaping in the Murraysville Community Park. Ryan, if we could shift gears now, just talk briefly about the schedule.
Sure. So the planned schedule right now, always subject to change, but assuming all approvals would be in place, Olympus intends to begin construction this coming spring and summer. So that would be spring and summer of 2023. With then the first trip of drilling to occur later in the year, so beginning around December, and likely lasting through February of 2024, with completions operations beginning right after that, so February 2024 through approximately April 2024, with then a production date of August of 2024. And then currently planned for the second trip to finish the 8 wells that we've submitted with this application. They currently have on the schedule for March of 2025, and those activities would go through the end of 2025, so approximately 3 years from now.
Again, we understand that if Olympus chooses to do any additional trips beyond that, the approval we're requesting now is just for those 2 sets of trips. We would come back with a subsequent conditional use application for those.
So it's a total of 8, and it's not necessarily 4 and 4. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think the plan is 4 and 4, but that could shift a little bit. It'd be 3 and 5, 2 and 6, for example. This is going to be more relevant when we get to the traffic issue, but what are Olympus's plans for water sourcing of fresh water during hydraulic fracturing?
So Olympus intends to pipe their fresh water during the hydraulic fracturing stage. They're currently working on a waterline route that would come through Plumboro to the site. Olympus currently has an existing water withdrawal on the Allegheny River. So the waterline route would connect that withdrawal to the well pad.
And the large volume of water needed during this whole process is during hydraulic fracturing, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, is there a limited amount of water that's needed during drilling?
Yes, and that water would likely still be trucked.
And Mr. Miller, who will have testify after Mr. Daly, will talk about the impact of having water piped instead of trucked in on total traffic volumes, and then walk through a brief summary of the traffic impact study, and most importantly, walk through the route and all the improvements that are going to be made on the route. So with that, I have no further questions for Mr. Daly.
Before Mr. Fitchett crosses, does council have any questions? Any questions on this witness? Just clarification, what is the rationale for the modification request for the landscape relief?
Yeah. So, as I said, the trees and shrubs that we proposed sufficiently screen the site from the east and from the north, which is where existing topography and existing vegetation does not screen the site. Really, if we were to add additional plantings here, in my opinion, they wouldn't do anything to add additional buffering or screening. They would simply be planting trees in a place where nobody's really going to see them, and most likely up against existing forested vegetation that's out there today.
I would say this was discussed extensively by the Planning Commission, the waivers, and they were satisfied with it.
Okay. That's all I have for Mr. Daly.
Mr. Fitchett?
Mr. Daly, I just have a handful of questions. So some of them were going to be about the questions that the board just asked, so I'll just skip over those. Are the species that you're going to be planting at the site, are they native species?
That I'm not sure. We did have the plan prepared by a registered landscape architect. I can't speak to whether they're native species or not.
Okay. And are there going to be any additional work done to ensure that those those plants do survive in the landscaping? Is there going to be amendment of the soil or plans to go back and fix any trees that die?
Yes, my understanding is Olympus would be required by the municipality to maintain all the landscaping that's proposed.
Okay. And are there plans for seed mixes on the rest of the site?
The rest of the site would be stabilized with meadow species in accordance with the DEP requirements.
So, in regards to the setbacks, there are some buildings that are within 350 feet of the pad?
There are some farm buildings located to the north, and those are the same property owner as the well pad is on.
Okay. And are there some other buildings within 750 feet?
The two residents to the east of the well pad are located within 750 feet. And Olympus did get waivers signed from those landowners to waive that requirement.
Okay. And were those agreements approved and signed by the municipal solicitor?
That I do not know.
The buildings that are part of the farm to the north, are those occupied?
That I do not know.
Do you know if people work in them?
I know it's an active farm with cattle. I do not know what the farm buildings in specific are used for.
Okay.
Which buildings are you referring to?
Those I was referring to the Mills farm buildings
They're on
to the north of the path.
On the same parcel?
On the same parcel, yes. Excuse me. And is the surface use agreement that was signed with the Mills, is that the only document involved in the setback waiver? The basis for the waiver of the setbacks.
Are you referring to the waiver of the setbacks for the two farm buildings, or are you referring to the two across
the two farm buildings?
The farm buildings. That I'm not sure if there were any other documents specific to that.
And do you know that surface use agreement that leased out the subsurface oil and gas? Is that?
Again, I'm not familiar with the subsurface agreements here. I do know that the surface use agreement specifically for construction of the well pad was included with the application.
Okay. So do you know if the land that this whole well pad is on, is that under lease in some form?
I would assume so, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. And are there any associated facilities with this well pad in Plum?
When you refer to associated facilities,
is going to be connected in some way to Plum and other facilities there?
So Hyperion Midstream, which is a entity of Olympus Energy, does currently have a conditional use and land development application under review with Plum for what's known as an interconnect facility. That's where they would transfer gas from their pipelines into the existing Eastern Gas transmission pipeline. We've had various meetings with Plum, both Planning Commission and Council, over the last couple months on that project.
And it's just, what is the reason needing the two different access routes to the site? There's the route coming from the north and the route coming from the south.
It really would just be efficiency, and depending on where the trucks are coming from.
And it sounded like there's going to be, and this is more a question for you, Mr. Lucas, there's somebody else that's going to be speaking more about the traffic issues, the road construction. Okay. With that, I have nothing further for you. Thank you, Mr. Daly.
Mr. Daly, while you're there, are we able to see where Ms. Ash's property is, just to help reference it?
Let's see here. So this exhibit is actually a full-size exhibit of the exhibit that Blaine and Miss Ash had looked at.
That would have been Exhibit I believe.
The red box in the center of this exhibit is the proposed well pad. Miss Ash's property, as identified, is located to the northwest in this direction.
Thanks. Which one? Okay. Thank you.
I don't have any further questions.
Any other counsel, any questions of this witness?
What was the distance to Miss Ash's property? I mean, rough distance, not exact, just curious.
So we have a dimension on drawing SP02 from the nearest corner of the well pad to the nearest point on Miss Ash's property, and that is 1,317 feet away. And then I would note that her residence appears to be even further than that into her property.
Are you required to notify all of the adjacent landowners to the well? All of the properties that border?
When Olympus files their drill permits, they will be required to send notifications to all landowners within a certain radius of the well pad.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I don't know, Mr. Fitchett, if that raised any. Okay. All right, I think, Mr. Daly, thank you. Next witness.
Olympus now would like to call Mr. Keith Miller. Mr. Miller, could you state and spell your full name for the record?
Yeah, Keith Miller, Keith, Miller, Miller.
And by whom are you employed?
Stahl Schaefer Engineering.
Okay, and what position do you hold with Stahl Schaefer?
I'm a civil designer.
Okay, and what's your educational background?
I've got my Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Penn State in 2018.
Just briefly, if you could provide a little background on the industries and types of projects that Stahl Schaefer is involved in.
Yeah, so we've done work for PennDOT, Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission, local governments, oil and gas before, and commercial developers.
Could you explain to the board, the council, and the public what a traffic impact study is?
So a traffic impact study, or also called a transportation impact study, it's designed to assess the existing roadway infrastructure operations and impact of the proposed project on the study network and identify on and off-site improvements that might be necessary.
Okay, what's the process you go through? What do you do to evaluate that?
So we just identify the study area, the intersections, and by doing this, we get the data collection, which consists of getting traffic counts, crash data, and going out there for field views, calculating the trip generation, and distributing through the study area, and doing traffic analysis at the intersections, which consists of the capacity and queue analysis and summarizing in the report.
And did Stahl Schaefer undertake a traffic impact study for the Hermes well pad?
Yes.
And were you involved in that?
Yes.
You participated in the drafting of it?
Yes, the initial draft of it, yes.
Now, the Planning Commission, there was another gentleman who testified on traffic issues, I name it Joe Gooley. Is that correct? He also was Stahl Schaefer?
Yes, he is.
And he's not available tonight, correct?
Correct.
So you're the lucky guy that gets to testify.
That's me.
Okay. Important, this point was noted by Mr. Daly. The completions activity, the hydraulic fracturing, that's anticipated, that'll generate the highest volume of traffic of all the stages in the process. Is that correct?
Yes, and that was used for the purposes of the study to be conservative.
And when Stahl Schaefer did the traffic impact study here, did you focus then on that stage of development in terms of the impact it would have on the roadway system?
Yes.
Okay. And so you used that as the, I would say, conservative or worst case volume in terms of evaluating what impacts Olympus's operations would have. Is that right?
Correct. It would be worst case scenario, yeah.
And so let's just talk briefly. Is it correct that when you're evaluating impact on the roadway system, really what matters most is the peak hour traffic? Is that right?
Correct, yes.
And that affects delays and movements at significant intersections, for example.
Yep.
What were your assumptions based on the fact that fresh water would be piped instead of trucked to the site? What kind of vehicle volume did your traffic impact study assume for purposes of evaluating the roadway system?
So for, like Blaine said, so for the peak hour during completion, so it would be, a trip would be from going from your house to work, so that's how a trip is defined. So it would be 11 entering trips and 11 exiting trips. So 5 of those would be your typical vehicle, a truck or a passenger car, and 3 of those would be your heavy vehicle, which would be the recycled water, and 3 of those would be heavy vehicles, which would be sand trucks.
So if the board, council wants, we have operations people can explain that in more detail, but basically, if all the fresh water is being piped, you will still have, as you testified, roughly 3 sand trucks in per hour, and also 3 recycled water either being trucked to the site or being trucked away. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So at that point, you're looking at, as you pointed out, a total increase in vehicle traffic of 11 vehicles in and 11 vehicles out in a peak hour during hydraulic fracturing.
Correct.
And during drilling and the pad construction, those numbers would be substantially less. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. What intersections did Stahl-Schaefer evaluate?
So the intersections would be, Logan Ferry Road and the site access, the proposed site access, and the Logan Ferry and PA 380, and then the intersection of SR 4058 and 380 right here.
And those were intersections that were agreed to based on consultation with the municipality's traffic engineer. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. What were Stahl-Schaefer's overall conclusions about the impact that that Olympus's vehicle activity would have on the roadway system?
So there would be no significant lasting impact on the existing traffic conditions. There would be no significant decreases in the level of service, and I did the traffic warrants for a signal, and there is a traffic signal already warranted at the intersection of 380 and 4058 I'm pointing out right now. So there's already a signal warranted there.
Okay. Without taking into account the additional traffic from Olympus, your conclusion was that intersection already warranted a traffic signal. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's shift gears now and talk about the improvements that Olympus is proposing to do at its cost, starting at the well pad and moving back to that intersection and that signal.
So starting at Logan Ferry, so at the site driveway, it would be a minimum use driveway. It would be 2 lanes controlled by 1 stop sign. So, and then on Logan Ferry Road itself, they would do a mill and overlay, and they would do a minimum 20 feet or the current paved cartway, which is just whatever is greater. So you'd at least have a 20-foot minimum. The width of this area currently ranges between 21.5 and 26 feet. The width of a sand truck is 8.5 feet, and they will both be able to pass on Logan Ferry safely. And so starting at Logan Ferry and going towards 4058, so this would be PA 380. So the pavement width is already 22 feet, and as said, Olympus will be widening this northern part of this intersection of Logan Ferry and PA 380 to permit a SU-40 water truck and a sand truck to pass each other. And trees and vegetation will be trimmed, and Olympus will provide, they will apply for a permit from PennDOT for that.
You're talking about widening the turning radius on the northeast corner of that intersection, is that right?
Correct.
And it's your understanding that Olympus has already purchased that property for those purposes, is that correct?
Correct. Okay. So moving on to the intersection of 380 and 4058. So as I said, the TIS concluded that a traffic signal is already warranted there. So to update it, we would realign the intersection proposed, and the traffic signal will be installed during the completion stages, so not at the initial stages of the pad construction. And so a permanent signal would be put in place by the end of construction. So right now the lead time of mast arms to get is around 25 weeks just due to COVID. So what Olympus can do is put a temporary signal, which is would be the same thing as how it's going to be at the end in final form, but you can just use utility poles and strain wire, which is very readily available. So
there will be some structural improvements to the intersection and installation of the signal. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Like I said, and trees and vegetation will be trimmed adequately, and Olympus will apply for a permit from PennDOT, but they will need the municipality to apply for this.
So just so it's clear, in terms of the structural improvements, Olympus can apply for that highway occupancy permit. Is that right?
Yes.
But the signal itself, the municipality has to be the applicant.
Correct.
Okay. Just roughly, what's the expected cost for these improvements?
So for all the improvements, it would be approximately $500,000.
Okay, and Olympus is, for the record, Olympus is committed to bearing the costs of doing all those improvements.
What was that amount again?
$500,000.
Okay, that's all I have for Mr. Miller.
Any questions, counsel, of this witness?
Not so much a question, but just for, I guess, for the knowledge of all, is that as far as the, when school buses are running, are the sand trucks or water trucks going to be running?
I think someone else would have to testify to that.
Anyone should come. Yeah. I'll have that question answered by Mr. Manny Johnson. Manny, could you state and spell your full name for the record?
Yeah, Manny Johnson, M-A-N-N-Y, last name Johnson, J-O-H-N-S-O-N. We work with the...
And Manny, what's your position?
Vice President of Operations. But we work with the school district on when buses are coming in and out, so that section of Logan's Ferry, usually the township roads, we institute what we call like blackout hours, where we do not run against the school buses there.
Mr. Miller, you mentioned the temporary signal. Is that going to be up day one? What's the commitment on the temporary signal?
The temporary signal and the improvements of that intersection would only be required prior to the completion's hydraulic fracturing activity, because that's when the higher volume of traffic is going to be. All the other improvements would be made before any dirt is turned on the site.
So just the aligning that geometry of that intersection, that's going to happen simultaneously with the traffic signal. So before the completions phase, that alignment's not going to change?
So it would change in conjunction with the signal.
So if anybody's familiar with that intersection, they won't see anything any different with that intersection until that completions phase.
That's correct. I think in the testimony was that's targeted for February of 2024. But all the other improvements would be in place before any access road or pad construction takes place.
Anything else?
Yeah, Mr. Miller, does a traffic impact study incorporate any type of sound disturbances?
No, not for the traffic impact study.
Okay. Specifically, like it wouldn't take into consideration the heavy trucks using compression release engine brakes, like Jake brakes?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fitch?
I have a quick question. the signal that's going in, you said 500,000 in improvements. That's inclusive of the permanent signal that would go in as well, or is that something that PennDOT would?
That's inclusive with the signal.
Olympus would be doing that. Okay.
I just have a few questions for you. Do you know how many trucks of recycled water are going to be used, or is that outside of your purview?
I do not know off the top of my head. No.
But your traffic impact study, did it take into account the sand trucks?
Yes,
and
correct.
Waste trucks?
Correct.
And all the water trucks?
Correct.
Okay. And if the water piping that's supposed to go through Plum to feed this well pad, you testified that that takes a lot of the trucks off of the road?
Correct. Piping does, yes.
Is that completed yet?
I can't testify to that.
Okay. If it's unable to be completed, that would increase the amount of water trucks that are on the roads?
Yes, in theory.
Okay. And did you analyze a scenario where, for whatever reason, Olympus is unable to secure all of the permits and whatnot that it's required for that piping?
I just note it's a condition, proposed condition of approval.
Just for
that's where I was kind of
proposed condition of approval that Olympus has to truck that fresh water. So
yeah. I think we're all clear, and you can stipulate if it doesn't happen, you start over.
Right. We cannot undertake completions operations until such time as we have the freshwater pipe to the site.
And if you don't get the freshwater pipe, this approval won't be applicable.
Well, within the time periods that are allowed under the proposed conditions, that's correct. I mean, there's a window of time that we'll talk about that Olympus has the opportunity to develop the site, and we have to stay within those parameters, and we can't hydraulic fracture until such time as the fresh water can be piped to the site.
No, it's my understanding that the study, and this is, I think, what Mr. Fitch is getting at, and we agree, that the trucks that have been studied are dependent on the diminished numbers based on trucking the water during completions.
The study assumes that water will be piped, and therefore there'll be diminished substantially reduced truck flow because of that.
And the study doesn't include the increased trucks if it's not piped.
That's correct, because we're agreeing as a condition that we cannot hydraulically fracture the site until we're able to pipe the water.
Okay, so our position would be this approval would not be valid. They'd need a new traffic study. Okay.
We understand that.
That was the gist of the thrust of my question. So thank you. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Are you okay, the court reporter? Are you all right? Do you need a break?
Olympus would now like to call.
Just checking if we need a break. If you want to just let us know when you.
Let us know.
Olympus would now like to call Mr. Tage Rosendahl. Tage, could you state and spell your full name for the record?
That's Tage, T-A-G-E, Rosendahl, R-O-S-E-N-D-A-H-L.
And by whom are you employed?
I work for Acoustical Control.
And what position do you hold?
I'm the regional manager for the Appalachian Basin.
And what are your job responsibilities?
I manage all of our consulting services and mitigation services that we perform for various clients, mostly east of the Mississippi and in Canada.
Does that involve both monitoring existing sound levels and projecting what sound levels might be?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Were you was acoustical control retained by Olympus with respect to the Hermes well pad undertake what's called an ambient study and to also undertake what's called a sound impact assessment?
We were.
And what is an ambient study?
So an ambient study is a sound study where we set a monitoring device over a period of time to establish what the background sound levels are.
And conversely, what is a sound impact assessment?
A sound impact assessment is a study where we utilize predictive modeling computer software and sound data to propagate noise over a map to show the impact on the surrounding area.
So, if I understand correctly, you take existing known sound levels, either that have been previously measured or specifications on equipment, and that's entered into the software program, and then based on factors such as topography, for example, you model out what the projected sound levels are going to be at certain locations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is topography, it's fair to say topography is probably the most critical item?
Sound power levels of the equipment and topography and distance.
And what do you do with respect to vegetation? When you model, what do you assume about whether leaves are going to be on the trees or not be on the trees?
Since we aren't sure exactly of the time of the operation, we omit foliage on trees, so it provides a more conservative measure.
Just for the record, in the board's packet, or the council's packet, more near the front, Exhibit A7A was the ambient study that was undertaken for the Hermes site. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then Exhibit A7B, which immediately follows, that's the sound impact assessment.
Yes.
Okay. Now, with respect to the ambient study, what were your findings as to existing, well, let's hold off on that first. The municipality has a separate noise ordinance, separate from the zoning ordinance, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it has what are called maximum LEQ sound levels in the RR district in which this property is located, is that right?
Yes.
And those are 50 during the day and 45 during the evening and the night, correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you did your ambient sound study at the pad site, what were your findings as to what the level of the decibel level was?
The average sound level from the 72-hour period of April 22nd through the 24th was 48.51 decibels.
So the ambient is already higher than what the ordinance maximums are, is that right?
That is correct.
We'll talk a little bit about the Titan pad in a little bit, but that was the same situation there, is that correct?
Yes.
And the council granted a waiver in light of that.
They did.
Let's talk about your conclusions in the sound impact assessment, which again is in the packet, but we have enlarged on a board here what your conclusions were with respect to projected sound levels at various points around the proposed well pad with what's called mitigation, meaning assuming that there would be a sound wall. Is that correct?
Yes.
And your study also modeled it without a sound wall, but Olympus is committed to placing a 32-foot high sound wall. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so when you do that, you could just walk through briefly what you're seeing, what your projections were at during the three key stages of site development: vertical drilling, horizontal drilling, and then hydraulic fracturing.
Sure. So we modeled 25 receiver points around the Hermes well pad. Some of them were in Plum and some of them were in Murraysville. During the vertical drilling portion, we meet the ordinance requirements at all times, with the highest R1 being 43.9.
And that's the surface owner's property, is that correct?
That is correct. It is also below the ambient sound level. During horizontal drilling, we also noted that we would meet the ordinance sound level at all times, with the highest level at R1 of 42.5 decibels. And then during completions, which is the loudest portion of development, we met the 45 decibel level at all times except at R1, 2, 3, 4, and 24, where we ranged from 52.3 decibels projected to 47.3, all slightly above or below ambient sound levels.
Just as kind of a point of reference, what does a sound level of 50 dBA equate to?
A quiet street.
So the waiver that's being requested here is to allow an increase of 10 decibels above the ambient of 48 and change. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and just by comparison, we'll talk about this in Titan in a moment. At Titan, the ambient there was 58.64, and the waiver that was granted there was 10 above that, up to 68.64. Is that right?
Yes.
So effectively, what we're requesting here is a limit that's 10 decibels less than what the waiver that was granted for the Titan site. Now, if a complaint is received by Titan or by Olympus, are you usually alerted to that?
Yes.
Okay. Are you aware of there being any complaints with Olympus or to the municipality related to the noise levels at the Titan site?
I'm not.
Okay. Lastly, during the proceedings before the Planning Commission, a request was made for you to assemble some data from the monitoring that was taking place on a regular basis at the Titan pad. You remember that?
Yes.
And did acoustical control go back and assemble some data based on that?
We did.
And is that document that's the conclusions of that analysis, is that the document that's marked as Exhibit G?
Yes.
Okay. If you could, in a very general sense, what were your findings as it related to the sound levels at Titan?
So during vertical drilling, the average sound level, we had 3 monitors. One was 400, one was 850, and one was approximately 1,050 feet from the well pad. The average sound levels during the vertical portion that we looked at were 47.1. During horizontal drilling, 45.3. And during completions, they were 53.8.
And all those were well below the waiver limit that was established in the Titan decision. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, those measuring points that you monitored, how do they compare with the nearby properties or houses in the vicinity of the proposed Hermes well pad?
They're comparable or closer. I believe Mr. Daly testified that the closest was 1,200 feet that didn't have an agreement.
Were there some exceedances, spike exceedances above the decibel levels that were set in that waiver?
Yes.
And what was the source of those?
So we went back and looked at the data and found the times and listened to the sound clips from those periods. And in general, they're all normal, natural phenomenon, things that happen every day, whether that's, insect noise, birds, traffic, planes flying over, stuff like that.
Weather?
Absolutely.
What happened after Olympus ceased its operations and went into permanent production? What did your data show?
So we did look at the post-operational data as well, and it was the end of August, beginning of September timeframe, and we noticed that actually the sound levels increased.
And did you examine what the source of that was?
We did, and it was insect and frog noise.
Insects and frogs?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have for Mr. Rosendahl.
Any questions? Just if you, Ms. Ash's residence.
Do we know where her address is, or her?
I think your testimony is that the geography, topography is a prime factor.
It's included, yes, and it certainly affects propagation.
Yes, so just looking at if you have any topographical information on the Ash property, do you expect there to be any particular impacts there?
So on our report, it would be R4 or our R6. During the completions, we look to have them at 47.3 or 44.4, depending on if it's 4 or 6.
And so that's less than ambient.
Oh, it's several decibels less than ambient, and also less than your requirement.
So
no, 47.3 is above. Sorry.
Does that mean if I'm on the Ash property, I'm not going to hear it because of the background?
No, because the background will fluctuate. So to say that you won't hear it is not accurate. But to say that it is above the allowable limits that we are seeking, no, that's a correct statement.
But is it a correct statement to say there's not going to be anything that's louder than what the peak ambient is?
Yes.
So there's nothing louder than they're hearing out there now?
Not from the well pad. There will be things that happen around them. Again, normal, natural things. A bird chirping at 85, 90 decibels is going to be louder, obviously, than what they're going to be hearing. But it's not consistent. It's intermittent.
And the way you can delineate that is when you do your monitoring, you have recorded sound clips that you can go back and if there's a exceedance or a spike, you can evaluate what caused that. Is that correct?
Yes, the monitoring equipment has the ability to set thresholds, limits, and when those are exceeded, it automatically records the data.
And there's a question before about truck traffic, including a Jake brake. Does your analysis take into account the trucks?
We do not, as it's a transient activity.
Question is that, did you take into account diesel generation or electric generation?
Diesel.
Okay. I may ask the attorney then, is there something in there that there should be electric generation?
That's an operational issue that you can discuss with your solicitor, but as one of the proposed conditions, Olympus it will certainly examine and try to use electric if they can. But there are a lot of market conditions and availability that could impact that.
But the obvious is that diesel generates more sound than an electric generation.
Yes.
What's the difference, Tage?
I mean, there's a lot of factors, but I mean, in general, I mean, you're going to be anywhere from 5 to 10 decibels lower in general.
Okay.
Depends on where you are. I mean, if you're on the pad, there's a significant difference if you're standing at the turbine versus, standing at a diesel pump. So it's kind of a hard question to answer. But, if you were, at a distance in some normal conditions, 5 to 10 decibels lower than a diesel fleet.
And again, your modeling during completions assumes the louder use of diesel. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, just by the way, I asked you to do this when you came in tonight. Did you bring a hand monitor?
I did.
And did you take some quick measurements out in the parking lot here?
Yeah. So we measured for about 10 minutes in the parking lot, and the sound levels were high 40s to low 60s. The average sound levels. Let me find the right paper. Hang on. Generally over 50 decibels or 60. So, I mean, again, louder than, you know, your thresholds are allowing for.
I think this is obviously a question for another day, not this application, but I think the one could posit that maybe the municipality needs to take a look at your ordinance, because when you have ambience exceeding your ordinance requirements, in our view, that's one of the justifications for the waivers we are requesting.
Yeah, so during that 10-minute period, the average sound levels were 48.85 to 61.85, and all but one were above 56.44. So you were above 56 9 out of the 10 minutes that we monitored.
Oh, I have.
Doing good. How are you today?
Living the dream.
Indeed. I just have a couple of questions for you. So you did say that sound walls are being proposed, 32-foot sound walls?
Yes.
Do any of the studies that you look at, did they take into account the earth-moving activities that have to happen before actual drilling and completion?
Construction is generally not part of these or part of the requirements by ordinance. Happens during daylight only.
But those trucks can be loud and would be on the site?
Yeah.
And potentially could violate the noise ordinance?
No.
How not?
I mean, from that distance, one truck operating is not going to you know, bounce us out of compliance compared to what a diesel fleet would be.
There will be more than one truck on the site at one time working, potentially?
Potentially.
Okay. So none of your studies took any account of all the trucks that are coming and leaving the site. You said that those were transient, and so they weren't taken into account?
Correct.
Okay. And do you know how many trucks come to and from the site on the days of completion? And
I don't off the top of my head, but I believe that was testified to previously.
I think it was somewhere around 800 over the course of the day. Would that have, you know, somewhat less of a transient effect on the days that there are hundreds of trucks coming to and from a site?
Potentially if they're sitting around, but I think they're generally moving relatively consistently. So you wouldn't have a period where you'd have 800 sitting around.
Okay. So even with the 32-foot sound walls, your scenarios showed that it would still exceed the noise ordinance at these different residences. Is that correct?
Yeah, the most restrictive component of the noise ordinance, which is only at night and only at 4 or 5 receivers slightly, and it's still less than or comparable to what the ambient sound levels were at the time we monitored.
Did you analyze what the numbers would be at the fence line of the property?
We did look at that as well.
Okay. Were those...
Not the fence line, but the property line.
Property line. Were those higher than at the residences?
In some cases, yes.
Okay. And the sound impact assessment that you did was solely an average. Is that correct? The numbers that came out of the sound impact assessment looked to be all averages at the different receivers?
Yeah, so what you do is you take the acoustical data, which includes all the frequency level data, and then you calculate that into what's called sound power level. That's what you put into the software, and then that's what puts out a number. And yes, so I mean, it's not going to account for any spiking per se.
So there could potentially be spikes from the equipment or during these processes that might exceed the averages that are shown in your analysis?
Generally, no. The equipment that's operating consistently is generally going to be louder than the things that would be potentially spiking, generally.
Okay. And all of these studies were with auditory sound, right? Stuff that we would hear, not necessarily what we would feel in our feet in the ground?
I don't know off the top of my head the low end of the frequency, but we do, like I said, use the frequency spectrum. So I believe it goes down to 63 hertz, which is getting towards that point where you start to feel things.
Okay. And were any, so during completion processes or drilling processes. People have, in other contexts, have said that they can feel the ground shaking. And is any of that taken into account?
No, that would be earthborne vibration. It's a different thing.
Okay. And so no studies were done on earthborne vibrations by your company?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I've got nothing further. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you.
Mr. Lucas, any?
No further
redirect?
I have a question. When you're working in communities that are similar to ours, as far as rurality goes, what are their ordinances like as far as their acceptable noise levels?
Yours is about as restrictive as it gets. You see some stuff in Western Canada, Colorado. You'll see some, where the requirement may be 40. But the distances out there are much greater generally, so it's a little easier to attain. Locally, you'll see there's usually a component of allowance where, so if say the threshold is 55 decibels, which is pretty common, unless, the ambient shows to be higher, then you may see, say a 10 decibel increase allowable during completions and say 7 decibels or, 5 and 10. It varies, with townships, but generally, you're going to see an allowable limit of 55 or 60, and then there's usually a component of allowable.
Thank you.
Anything else? Next witness, Blaine.
We have additional people here. If the council has any questions, that is Mr. Rosendahl is our last witness. What I would like to do to kind of conclude our presentation is to walk through some of the key conditions that were included in the recommendation from the Planning Commission, to which Olympus will agree. Those are exhibit.
If we could, in consideration for the fact that other folks are here that are on the other side, that their time and their testimony, I think we could do that at the end of the witness portion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So knowing that we'll have some summary time for each of you once we get the testimony in, you've closed on presenting witnesses and any exhibits?
Correct.
Okay. And we've admitted all those exhibits subject to Mr. Fitchett, you taking a look at them and letting us know if you have any objections. So with that, it's your time.
We just take a 5-minute break.
Sure. Is that
okay? Okay. Take a 5-minute break, everybody.
Was 6? Is that 6? Well, 6 or 8?
I thought it was 8.
Is it 8? I was just curious, the size, just the size difference.
Yeah, and they were done.
They're pretty similar.
Yeah, they were done at once.
At one time.
Yeah.
So this
is going to stretch out. Yeah. But
I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember if it was 6 or 8.
You may be right. Jim, was Titan 6, right?
I think it was 6.
Yeah, it was 6, yeah. You're right.
So those are the ranges.
Well, then protected, as far as cruises are concerned,
yeah.
The point is that all the way up on that side.
And they're usually much more oriented results. In fact, I think some of them don't even allow their programming. Disney and all of those mega ship and they have some pretty good river cruises. That's what Tony's doing. You don't want to tour the Ukraine.
Where are they going to follow me go on?
Gas line blow up under your ship.
Yeah.
Well,
You know, I don't think there's much you could We really don't know how to manage technology.
that's a Dyson.
Will and bits and bytes.
Risk.
And then there was in terms of our government.
So,
Probably less than about 8 days. Yeah, I'm gonna come in probably.
I had the last
I think good. Yeah, he's very
the other thing is justice hasn't maintained, hasn't grown in its capacity.
use it all.
Yeah, if there's a planning matter. Sure.
Right. I'll give you the.
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, that'd be good.
What they do with it. I didn't think that they even had them written out unless they had them.
Not by name. Will you have something for the January meeting? Want to take it to planning? All right.
I think they did say
I consider myself somewhat.
Send the train today. I'm going to take one more look just to cross check. Just because there's all kinds of. You guys are going to do this better than me.
Okay, good.
Nomenclature definitions, working all the right stuff in.
Good. That bottom line is, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want the transcript unless I need it.
That's absolutely.
I won't order the transcript unless I need it.
Jamie, I have.
The only reason I would order the transcript is if there's an appeal.
Perfect.
Not right now. Is that okay? Yeah, we'll order it. Okay?
The individual. Quite nicely.
Yeah.
Sounds ready to take action on it.
Close the public hearing.
Yeah, thanks.
Next meeting, we'll vote.
I can't believe it. You're sticking around for the regular meeting.
No, I was going to say.
Hit the gavel again.
Yeah, we got to get 5 minutes is up.
It's moving pretty good though. So getting it in. Oh, good.
5 minutes is up. Huh?
Yeah.
You ready, hon?
You are.
much as I'd like to roll.
Not here. He's not here.
Great.
There he is.
So I'd like to start by saying that two studies were put in today, the traffic impact study and I believe an air quality impact study, that are new, that we have not had a chance to look at. And I would request a continuance to give us some time to review that and ask questions at the next hearing.
Okay. So just let's explore that. When these were reviewed at the Planning Commission, correct?
That's correct.
So when was that most recent public meeting of the Planning
Commission? Several Planning Commission meetings, but there was one public hearing of the Planning Commission back, I believe, late summer. And there's in my understanding, there are no material changes that would impact an analysis of the roadway conditions here. You know what the changes are?
Microphone. Blaine, Blaine, please use the mic.
Microphone.
We don't believe there are any material changes here that would warrant keeping the hearing open on this.
Well, let's try to get precise because we want to give a fair thing I like about this area of the law, as you fellows know, is you got to come ready. And if it's out in the public domain especially, you know, we expect to have a full hearing on that. But what you gave us tonight, which I think would match, has to do with, let's look at noise first. The one that I have is dated September 1, 2022.
That was the Titan monitoring.
Well, we're going to go through all elements of this to make sure there's. Was this reviewed by the Planning Commission? Is this the one that was reviewed by the Planning Commission?
This was submitted to the township before the Planning Commission made their final recommendation. What review they undertook of it, I don't know.
Mainly, it was in the public domain.
Oh, absolutely.
By then.
Yeah,
and so then the ambient study was in well before that.
Well, both the ambient and the SIA, those are right out of the application binder. The exhibit A7A and A7B, they're dated April and May of 2022, and were included in the application from initially.
Okay, so
the only thing new is the ambient data that was provided at the request of the Planning Commission from Titan.
I understand. So the council can consider that in one, but from the very beginning of this process, many months ago, we've been looking at essentially the same sound study. So in terms of fairness and opportunity to be prepared for that, that's been in the public domain. Your other question was traffic, is that right?
Yes.
And could you work through that plan with us and to see when your traffic study and amendments were prepared and reviewed?
It's my understanding that none of the data has changed. The only thing that changed was that the traffic impact study was revised to reflect the realignment of the routes, basically at the suggestion of the Planning Commission and municipal staff, and it resulted in the proposed improvements that Mr. Miller has talked about. But the underlying data in terms of projected trips and the like, none of that changed.
But my recollection, which isn't reliable, is that this municipality has an unusual process where they have public hearings at the Planning Commission.
That's correct.
My recollection is at that public hearing, this amended final study was considered.
I think there were several amendments, but materially nothing changed from the one that I think is dated now, end of September, if I recall. Is that right?
Chairman Michael, do we have that public hearing date for the Planning Commission?
I can try to tell you that.
Not offhand.
We're doing some follow-up on this. Mr. Gooley, unfortunately, is the most familiar with what the changes were, and he's just not available tonight. I don't know if we want to reserve your ruling on that and have Mr. Fitchett present the balance of his case, and we'll try to get an answer as soon as we can, hopefully this evening.
Well, I want to deal with whether we're going to continue it or not now.
They were before planning on October 11th, as well as November 8th, it looks like. I don't, do you need to know, are you looking for the specific here, Planning Commission meeting when the traffic impact study was reviewed?
I'm actually looking at, because, as you know, public Planning Commission meetings aren't with public notice, but we had public notice of a hearing, which I think raises the bar substantially in terms of giving public notice of. A lot of times people don't know about a land development or conditional use until tonight because it's the first hearing. I don't think that's the case. I do think more than a month ago, but not too much more than a month ago, was the public hearing, and that was the public hearing, and Planning Commission made the recommendation the same night, I believe. In
public hearing, I think I have that here.
It had to be, because of the public notice requirements, we know, or it had to be more than 30 days, I assume.
I apologize. I'm trying to look through the past minutes, meeting minutes.
Mr. Miller has consulted with Mr. Gooley by phone. We could put him on if you wanted, but have there been any changes? Well, I'll let you speak.
There have not been any changes to the TIS since the last Planning Commission hearing.
Okay. All we need to do is...
We're trying to establish when that occurred. Is that...
I believe it was sometime last month.
Last Planning Commission meeting, I believe, was in the beginning of November.
Yeah, I think it was November 2nd. I'm just looking for confirmation.
Tuesdays are the Planning Commission, so.
Yeah, so it was either the 2nd or the 8th, according to my schedule. And it looks like, I believe the hearing was held on the 8th, just looking at my schedule, which would have been Yeah, the notice of the public hearing, and it was the initiation of that was July 12th.
And it was in the summer.
Yeah. So then the actual recommendation would have been November 8th.
Correct.
But the public hearing itself would have started in July 12th, and it's your testimony essentially that traffic study was done then.
Mr. Miller, is that correct?
It has not changed since the last planning.
No, since July. Okay. I think if you, the record of the Planning Commission will show that Mr. Gooley went through the same drill and basically focused on the revised route and the improvements are going to be made along it. That was done on November 8th. Or whatever the Planning Commission meeting was at the beginning of November.
Understand. There were mitigation recommendations made, but the study, the trucks, the traffic, all those impacts, that hasn't
That has not materially changed. That's my understanding.
So your request is now to do what, since we've had things that are in the public domain since midsummer?
So I understand the position that that's been in place. Another of my client's concerns is that we did have an expert who was unable to be here tonight. This is a fairly quick conditional use hearing. Usually these last for several months, and so we did not think that it was going to be a major issue for him to not be able, since he was unable to come tonight, for him to be here at the next meeting. He was going to speak about the setbacks and the ordinance and the application of that to this particular development.
So I just want to understand it. So you have that witness.
Yes.
And do you have everybody else tonight to testify, or is there anything else tonight?
There potentially, if there were issues found with the ENS, those would be another. Again, these documents we got a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So if there were, then Ms. Rindy would want to speak on those. And what we have here for witnesses tonight is our standing witnesses. We have Ms. Jillian Graber to speak about Protect PT, its purpose, and its relationship to this, as well as Ms. Ash, who is.
All right, thanks. What I'd suggest to council is let's hear from anyone they're going to testify tonight, and then council can decide whether to close out the hearing or to continue. So if you could present the witnesses that are here tonight.
In light of, if the representation is that Ms. Ash is a member of Protect PT, we will not object to the standing of Protect PT, and we haven't objected to the standing of Ms. Ash. So I don't know, from our perspective, there's not a need for any further testimony on those issues.
And that's your only objection to the other, Ms. Iannotti, sorry, is only the distance away, which.
Correct.
So you stipulate to her membership and standing, but for the distance from the site. So is there anything else you need on standing, or does that do it? That would do it. Okay. Then as to your request for a continuance, it would be to present a witness testifying specifically as to what?
Specifically to the application of Murraysville ordinances to this site development plan.
Well, that's a legal issue, I believe.
Right? So is this an expert? You mentioned the noise and the traffic, so we're not looking at having an expert per se.
No, the expert that we had retained is an expert at site development plans and land development plans and how the local ordinances apply to the plans that are.
Okay, so to Mr. Lucas's point, that sounds like testifying as to the legal conclusion, would it be expert testimony as to any of the compliance issues then?
Yes.
In what form?
To whether the setbacks are properly complied with. That's the main issue.
It seems to me that's a legal argument. Unless they're presenting additional facts, they're free to make legal argument, but to have somebody come in and critique Mr. Fitchett can do that as easily as quote unquote an expert.
Yeah, I think that's correct. They are facts, and certainly within council's purview to decide those facts. But any lay person can testify as to structures or setback locations. That's not a land planner.
Okay. We've used him in other instances where the council has considered it necessary for not this particular board.
Yeah, and I've actually been qualified in making those determinations. But I think Mr. Lucas would acknowledge that there are areas when it comes into application, for example, if you had a validity challenge. Here, I mean, you're just looking for a fact determination, like where the setbacks are. I don't think that's not, that's really not on that area at all. I'm willing to work with you, but I'm just not seeing that this ordinance, this isn't a validity challenge, right, to begin with, which would be talking about the application of those principles. Council's here just making fact determinations on compliance with the ordinance. So, I don't know. Looking to you, Mr. Lucas, too, because you're the one, if they challenge it, we're looking for, last thing we want to do is a remand, but I'm not seeing any basis for keeping the record open yet.
We would agree. I mean, unless they're offer that there's going to be a factual testimony as opposed to legal arguments about compliance with the ordinance sections, which doesn't require another witness. Mr. Fitchett could make a submittal, or we could make a submittal on those issues. I'm assuming the board or the council may not be making a decision tonight, but we think the record should be closed.
Yeah, we had, many hours of testimony on the validity of the ordinance itself on setbacks. Needless to say, that's something that was tested in court. That's gone. That's not the subject of this, and they're fixed. So we have those things that Mr. Lucas addressed, and if there are any facts, I think council wants to hear them, but otherwise I don't really see any basis.
No, I don't. No.
Last call. Any other shot?
Briefly, I can call Graber to discuss issues with truck noise that she has experienced.
Fine.
Ms. Graber, can you state your full name and spell it for the record?
Yes, it's Jillian Graber, Gillian Graber.
And what is your occupation?
I'm the executive director of Protect PT.
Okay. And in your work with Protect PT, you've done a lot of work around other well sites throughout Westmoreland County and Allegheny County. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How many different well sites have you worked on?
So we have done work around residence houses, around several different sites. I would say probably at least 6 with Olympus sites.
And with those sites, is truck noise a consistent complaint that you receive?
Yes, actually, so we were out doing noise studies. We have a noise study program at Protect PT. This was developed by an expert in the field of noise, Dr. Cynthia Richburg. She was at IUP, now she's at Wichita State University. And so she helped us develop a noise program that we utilize to study noise around well sites. And when I was going out to well sites in specifically Elizabeth Township, there was one residence that we were at in particular that was located right across from the access road, And just standing in the driveway, getting the equipment out of the car, there were at least 3 trucks that passed our vehicle as we were in the driveway, and the noise was extremely loud. And actually, because of that, we took measurements on the noise in the beginning at the front of the property, and then noise measurements at the back of the property. And the noise measurements at the front of the property, which was right across from the access road, were very high decibel levels.
I'm going to object. Number one, I think we're getting into expert testimony here. There's nothing to qualify Ms. Graber as any kind of expert on sound issues, and also object to a characterization of something who's being very loud. That's just vague and meaningless.
Okay. Continue.
Use the microphone, please, everybody.
We can pass it back and
When
forth.
they're speaking.
I do have a presentation available. I did not bring it tonight. I didn't think we were going to get to that tonight, but I have actual measurements that I could share with you if you wanted to accept those measurements.
I believe I've seen some of that. Did you happen to do any of this relative to the Titan site?
Yes, I believe we did present those facts at the Titan site.
And so at these, whenever a new well site is put in, does Protect PT get complaints from residents in the area?
Yes, so residents call us. We always ask them to call the municipality to make complaints. That doesn't always happen, but residents call us and ask what can they do. And so, we are most concerned about impacts to residents that goes beyond what the decibel level is at the site. It's more about what are the residents experiencing that is different from what they normally experience. So, for instance, Mr. Rosenthal talked about how birds and crickets are super loud, but we have experienced that what is really harmful or is really disturbing to the residents that live around the pad is, number one, the unknown of what is actually happening at the pad at the time, and two, the different types of stages that happen and the equipment that are on the pad. We hear a lot of concerns about the noise from the drilling rig, particularly the groaning and vibration.
To the extent we're
You can hold
to
it
the.
up. That's fine.
Is it?
Well, you can put it in your pocket, or you can hold it up if you'd like.
To the extent we're characterizing what other individuals told Ms. Graber, that's hearsay, and there's no way for us to cross-examine that. So we'd object to any statements that are purporting to relay what other individuals have told Ms. Graber.
So I could talk to my personal experience.
Yeah, if we could, and I know you have a standing objection as to the other items, but we want to give you some leeway here. You have been following this, and particularly in Titan, which there's been testimony at the Planning Commission that there were no complaints of noise. So it'd be interesting to hear, and that was from the municipal level, but.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a friend that lives actually very close to the Metis and Gaia well sites, and I was on her property while that site was being constructed, while the fracking was happening, and as well as the drilling, and it was much different. We were actually having an Easter egg hunt on the day that they were constructing, or one of the days that they were constructing the pad, and it was quite disturbing, particularly when we're in a yard. Her property is about 5 acres or so, and we're in the yard doing the Easter egg hunt, and we can hear everything happening at the pad. So things like this, I've had personal experiences of these, and like Mr. Fitchett was asking me in particular, we've had multiple complaints with multiple well pads.
An objection.
I understand.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the board about your experiences.
I don't know, and if there's anything else off the top of my head.
Just following up on the Titan, you heard that personally. Do you have any knowledge that that resulted in a complaint to the municipality?
I don't know if Titan resulted in a complaint to the municipality.
You certainly didn't make one at the Easter egg.
No, I did not, although I believe my friend that lives at that property did. Okay. We do have a map that was provided, that we received via right-to-know request to Penn Township about the Poseidon well pad, and it was actually provided by Olympus. At the time, they were called Huntley and Huntley, and we have that map as well that shows that people that were up. There was one resident that was up to 2 miles away that had complained to the township, and that resident subsequently has complained multiple times to the township about that site as well as the Meta site.
All right.
All right, nothing further. Thanks. Thank you.
Any questions, council?
No.
I don't. Jim, Michael, is there any evidence, was there any complaints that we know of in connection with the Titan pad noise?
In my duties as chief administrator, I did not receive any complaints of noise concerning Titan.
Okay, thanks. Okay, anything else, Mr. Fitchett?
No, nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Lucas, we were going to give you a chance to go through the conditions. I don't know if you each want to do a bit of a summary, but if you have something to state, you want to complete that, and Mr. Fitchett, if you want to respond to that, that's fine.
It's Olympus's position that that the company meets all the express standards of your quite rigorous set of ordinances. We presented testimony to that effect tonight. In addition, Olympus has agreed to a set of conditions based as part of the Planning Commission set of recommendations that, in our view, actually go in many instances, go beyond what we would be legally obligated to do. But as a good neighbor and wishing to minimize any potential impact its operations would have, Olympus is agreeable to those set of conditions, which we had marked as Exhibit
H.
Thank you. These were developed starting with the Titan conditions and basically mirroring the Titan conditions, with the exception to the extent that there were different factual issues like the roadways, for example, and the like. They're modified a little bit in that regard. There are 7 pages of them, 8 pages, 25 conditions with multiple subparts. I'm not going to go through all of them at this point, but the key ones would be Condition 14, which outlines Olympus's commitment to make all those road improvements that Mr. Miller testified to. Exhibit 15, or Condition 15, that set limits on the length of time and the number of trips that Olympus can undertake to develop these 8 wells. Exhibit 16, the requirement that we agree to that fresh water must be piped to the site during hydraulic fracturing. Exhibit 17 is the requirement for the construction of the 32-foot high sound wall and the requirement that Olympus undertake continuous remote noise monitoring and comply with the complaint procedures that exist under the municipality's ordinance. And then condition number 22, we just note the separate application that's pending in Plum Borough right now for the interconnect facility, which is a separate facility, but gas from the Hermes well pad will be piped to that interconnect, then go into the main transmission line that bisects both Plumboro and Murraysville. And then lastly, we request the waivers, the landscaping waiver. Again, we think we've met the requirements for modification there based on the testimony of Mr. Daly. And Olympus, again, is willing to make a substantial contribution to be used for landscaping in the community park. And then on the noise waiver, at the end of the day, we're requesting a limit that's 10 decibels lower than the limit that was applied at Titan. Again, with no testimony that there have been any complaints at Titan.
So these Exhibit H conditions are acceptable to the applicant?
Yes.
And the only other thing I've heard that was a little bit new to me is the condition to the extent that there's some land development grading permit requirement in Plum.
We'll, if you want to add that we'll obtain all necessary permits from Plum Borough, we have no objection to that.
Great. Any questions of Mr. Lucas?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Fitchett.
So we think that this shouldn't be denied or should be denied. I think clearly Protect PT has a interest in this not being approved, but we do think that it doesn't comply with the explicit conditions of the zoning ordinance. We don't think that so under 22030 D of the zoning ordinance, it requires that they show that there's no vibration, noise, fumes, light, or pollution that would be objectionable. And so I don't think that has been testified to in any way today. Further, there may be issues with the setback waivers. The setback waivers in the ordinance, this is section 22031. The definition of protected structure in section 3 defines terms throughout the condition for the conditional use requirements for these. The protected structures, the waiver must acknowledge that he has notified all residents on the property that the operator is explicitly relieved from complying with them, and it must be notarized and approved by the municipal solicitor. We also don't think that the farm buildings fall under the technical definition of a protected structure, which is defined as any protected structure is any occupied structure with walls and a roof within which persons live or customarily work, which is closer than 750 feet to the nearest portion of the boundary of the proposed well pad. It does exclude explicitly any structure located on a property other than an oil and gas property where the surface owner of the property has signed a waiver relieving the operator from the requirements for those setbacks. These are the 750 and 350 foot setbacks. For one, we believe that the only setback waiver from the landowners is included in the lease, which again doesn't comply with the requirements in the bottom of that. And further, it's other than an oil and gas property, and oil and gas property is defined as surface property for which the underlying oil and gas rights are leased for development or under the control of the operator. In this case, the property, the underlying oil and gas rights are leased, which means that it is an oil and gas property, which technical reading of what a protected structure waiver is allowed. They're not allowed for the particular properties in question. We also think that the sound and noise ordinances in this case should be complied with. As Ms. Graber testified to briefly, these do affect neighboring homeowners despite what the ambient sound quality studies may have shown. The studies also showed that they in fact violate the noise ordinance, which has been a concern in many other places, and that's with 32-foot sound walls. So even with a large amount of mitigation, they are still unable to actually comply with the ordinance. And we think for that reason, folks in that area are going to be affected and should be denied for that reason. And last, the truck traffic, which is a major concern for a lot of the folks in these areas. None of that has been taken into account in the in the sound impact analysis, as Mr. Rosenthal testified to. And so those are a lot of sounds that happen very frequently in those areas that are just not taken into account in that sound impact analysis. So thank you for your time.
Just so I could understand your position on the waivers, the two that they have, those are technical, notarized, and solicitor approval.
They are, okay.
And then on...
I did not see those in the application packet, so I apologize.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure, because we can go back and look at them, but just wanted to understand what the claimed deficiencies are. And then the on-site buildings, your position is they can't be waived.
I don't think that they can, under the terms of the definition.
Got it. So even if the landowner through the surface lease or through waivers, they're just not the ability to, they're not waivable, period.
Not under this ordinance.
Understood. Thanks. So I think what we'd recommend that council do is to consider a motion to close the record. And then I think if you can, notify the public that you're going to schedule it or put it on an agenda for an upcoming vote so that we don't have to separately advertise again, because that's would be part of the hearing, I believe. So if you could move to close it and then make a motion to continue to vote at the upcoming meeting.
Okay. I'd like to have a motion to end the public hearing.
Motion to end the public hearing and to have a decision rendered at the next council meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
21st. December.
21st, Jim? Mike?
December
21st?
That's
yeah. 21st of the month.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll take a few minutes and then we'll start our regular meeting.
For other people to sign.
So that's for our regular meeting.
Yeah, that's the regular meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. No problem. Just want to make sure that the public gets their rights. Exactly. That's most important.
What's that? Who wants coffee? That's your job.
Yes.
That's a woman's job.
Who seconded my motion?
I ducked after that.
Jason.
See you, Mr. City. Good to see you.
Clear the room.
Here, let's do.
Thank you.
Now we get to start the real meeting. It's 9:30. That was 2.5 hours. Jesus, that was a long time.
That'll be coming up. The timer out, huh?
Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Larry
Larry Keller.
Absolutely. Mayor may not remember me. I did my time.
You did your time.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. I'm supposed to be a recovering politician, but somehow it's like in Godfather.
You still want one?
They come getting out of me, pull me back.
Might as well give it to me. Let them pay the bill.
It's good. This is a good time.
I just want to.
George had me thinking all evening.
Copy then.
Bud Parker.
No.
I was just saying. He gave me the time around this time this year.
You're going to make it for the last meeting.
No.
Oh, you're not going to be here.
No, I don't need to be there, but it was probably right. I mean, it was right before the holiday. It was like on the 24th.
Just Bruce, you got it on your fingers. That's a real tradition.
It is. Well, Merry Christmas, guys.
Merry Christmas to you too, Bill. I'll tell Ted Malik I ran into you too.
Much better.
He can keep it.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just kept reading, and I'm like, don't let this have been when I was there. Just awesome. Yeah. I'm leaving. Yeah, right. After that, I started in City of Jeanette doing municipal work in Toronto, but it slowed down as I progressed more through the municipal side. So by the time I got to Toronto, which was 5 years ago, I wasn't doing as much. Growing from through the most part. So I practiced a little bit, but not much. I wasn't. Katie and I are going to stay. Well, I told him, I said, at the end, I can't put her on here. She was overseas. What I was doing
Are there a lot?
Okay. Oh, where's what's her name?
Burdell.
Bedell. Okay, everybody ready? Let's call to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Spadaro?
Here.
Mr. Lemack?
Here.
Dr. Lee Corns? Mr. McKenna?
Here.
Mrs. Ling?
Here.
Mr. Dice? Mr. Stepanovich?
Here.
Mayor Sinan?
Here. Pledge allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Okay, is there any announcements or unlisted acknowledgements, amendments?
No unlisted amendments.
No unlisted amendments. Consent calendar items, nothing there? Okay, I need approval of November 16th, 2022 minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the November 16th, 2022 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, comments by Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Spadaro. As we get the comments up on the screen here, they're not coming up.
I just got to knock on the door.
Well, while we're getting those up, I think we all need to remember what December 7th is. December 7th, 1941, a day that lives in infamy. Let us not forget the attack on Pearl Harbor and all who were lost on that fateful day. We all need to be thankful every day for our veterans. Beginning the announcements, Hempfield and Murraysville Parks and Recreation are sponsoring a bus trip to People's Gas Holiday Market Wednesday, December 14th. Stop 1 at Hempfield Park, 9 a.m. Stop 2, Murraysville Shops, 9:30. It leaves the market at 3 p.m. $35 per person and light snacks provided. Need to register at MurraysvillePARecreation.com or by mail or in person here at the municipal building. Next is the gift wrap party Thursday, December 15th, 6:30 p.m. Murraysville Community Center. Wrap all of your gift away from your children's prying eyes. Chat with friends while you wrap. Bring an adult beverage to enjoy. Share and swap wrapping papers and supplies. Again, register at MurraysvillePARecreation.com or you can call here, extension 131. Walk-ins are also welcome. We're going to have another glass recycling pop-up collection event Saturday, December 10th. Veterans Field Parking Lot, 4200 Salzburg Road, Murraysville, 9 to 2. Residents are also encouraged to support the Loaves and Fishes Emergency Food Pantry by donating non-perishable food items. Food pantry volunteers will be at the pavilion accepting drive-through donations during the same hours. Sponsors are Republic Service and the municipality. Murraysville Recreation Hot Chocolate Hikes. Saturday, December 17th at McGinnis Reserve, 10 a.m. Friday, January 6th at the Roberts Trailhead Murraysville Visitor Center, 2 p.m. Join the Recreation Department for some fun 2-3 mile hikes over the winter. These are wooded hikes with some slopes and may require stepping over fallen trees. Please dress for the weather and plan for the terrain, and you get to finish the hike with a cup of hot chocolate. Again, same registration, Murraysville PA Recreation, or call here. That concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Nestico.
Yes, just a few items. We will be removing are we asking council to remove item 13C from the agenda? Preemptively put that item on the agenda when it will be more appropriate to be approved or considered by council on December 21st. We must advertise the salary and tax ordinances first before approving the budget. There will also be a couple items that I will be addressing relative to the salary ordinance when we get to consideration for that advertisement. And lastly, just as we heard in the prior public hearing about the sound and noise ordinance requirements in the municipality, we are examining that. We did receive one proposal, and I'll be asking council for consideration of whether they would like to explore other proposals to modify and update our sound ordinance. As you heard from the expert at the previous public hearing, it does sound like that ordinance is in need of an update. So we'll be looking at that in the coming months here as well.
Thank you.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, community input. Okay, we have 4 people on the list. First person is Carol Holland. State your name, Carol, and you have 3 minutes.
My name's Carol Holland. I live at 3380 Sardis Road. And I'm here to speak, I was here to speak about the budget that was to be voted on tonight, specifically about the amphitheater. So I wrote to council about a month ago and about my concerns about how it's the, sorry, I'm really nervous. But anyway, I wrote to council about a month ago regarding the increase from $600,000 to 1.86. And Mr. Nestico wrote back with a pretty comprehensive progression, how the costs have progressed. And now I understand that there's another $113,000 to be added to it in this budget for 2023. So that brings the total to $1.973 million. Deducting the grants of $623,000 and $80,000 in contributions, that leaves $1.27 million to taxpayers. I'm just wondering, I'm hoping that you can review this and consider scaling it back some. Given the inflationary period that we're in, and we don't know where that's going to go. We took out a $5 million loan in 2017. I don't know what the terms are of that loan, whether it's an adjustable rate. There was some talk years ago, concern about whether or not we could handle emergencies. I understand that with that $5 million, some of that has been alleviated, but there are unknowns. We don't know what's going to go on in the future. So if we could scale back that project some so that we don't have to increase property taxes, that would be helpful, I think. I understand, the earned income tax rate was just increased, and we don't need to further increase any taxes. I also understand there are projects that have been deferred, and we should probably take care of what we need before we take care of what we want. I know an amphitheater would be nice to have, but is it necessary? There are additional concerns. There was recently a letter to the editor, and I agree with a lot of the questions that are proposed in that letter, specifically the inclusion and diversity.
All right.
I wonder what's in the
Have
grants.
to finish up.
Okay, but I just wonder what's in the grants that are stipulating that.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Jeanette Pavlik. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, good evening, Jeanette
Good evening.
Pavlik, Murraysville. So I did have a couple more questions about the amphitheater. Is it in the budget? Because if it is, are the questions that were brought up last meeting going to be answered? I know that there are people who asked questions in emails that was mentioned here and also at that meeting. So, and I asked a lot of questions at that meeting, and Dane Dice, President of Council, said that those questions would be answered before any money would be spent, any more money would be spent on the amphitheater. So will that be answered before the budget, which is in 2 weeks? Will those be answered, those questions first?
Councilman
Well, I
Wood?
believe there's a summary being prepared by the Parks and Recreation Department, and I believe that'll be presented, next council meeting?
I think just to provide some clarification, I think that Mr. McKenna will be speaking regarding the Parks and Rec Commission's recommendation this evening. However, due to the absence of Council President and the suggestion that all concerns would be kind of sifted through and addressed, and everything being presented in kind of a cohesive format, I think the plan, I don't want to speak for Mr. McKenna, but I think the plan may be to have amphitheater discussion, a thorough amphitheater discussion in the the second meeting in January, not at the reorganization meeting, which of course is, I believe, the second or third of the month, but rather the second meeting of January. So again, I don't want to speak obviously on behalf of council. It ultimately is council's decision as to when to address the topic or when you may choose to address some of the citizen concerns, but that's my understanding of how it may be approached.
Right.
Okay, yes, I'm very concerned about that. And a couple other things quickly. Westertown Road is, if you're expecting from 3,000 to 5,000 people to be using that road, it's in need of a lot of work. So is that a separate budget or is that a separate money expense if you're going to bring in that many people to that area? Because that road it's dangerous in some parts. Not in the main part, getting to the park from like Old William Penn, but going the other direction and also side roads. You know, when you're coming from an event, you don't want to get into traffic. You're going to go any route you can to get out of the area. And those other roads are there, and you can travel on them, but they're not equipped to have that much traffic in that close proximity to each other. A pickup truck was coming down and almost clipped me because it's a small road, short, narrow.
Well, like you said, a lot of these questions will be answered and discussed in our January meeting.
Okay.
And also, we need your address because you didn't give us your address when you started this.
Right, it's on the form.
No, we'd like to hear it.
Okay. Also, one other thing in this limited amount of time that I have. Remember the last meeting, I asked you to be nice to me. Think about the businesses that are in the area that do this kind of thing, have entertainment. And is this taking away, when you're thinking of having 20 events, is this taking away from their entertainment and their business? Have you talked with them? Like even right out the street, there's plenty of places like Helltown and some of the other breweries or wineries in the area, or any of the restaurants that are limited by that when you take away their business. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Vento? He's not here. Lawrence Keller? Name and address, please.
Lawrence Keller, Ridgewood Circle, Murraysville, for about 71 years. Not quite 71, 51. And I sat in your seat for 8 years, or one of the other seats, that seat for 3. At the time of one of those times of leadership, we purchased what is now Murraysville Community Park. And I thought it might be helpful for the council to understand a bit of the history and the lure of MCP to use as background for some of the decisions that you're making. First of all, MCP was purchased after a great deal of searching and even a false start. Council did make a pretty bad mistake in what is now the park south of Murraysville, or it's not a park, I don't know what it is right now. The Klein family decided that they would like to move. and they offered Murraysville the option to buy their farm. One of the things that they hoped for was that the farm would be continued in use as the kind of facility, a rural residential facility that characterized what Murraysville residents wanted at the time. And I venture to say what a lot of you came to Murraysville for, was a rural residential community. In any event, we purchased Murraysville Community Park, and we made certain stipulations to the neighbors in order to get their buy-in. One of them was there wouldn't be any lights. Another one was there would be only noise from cheering of people at athletic events and so forth. But it would still not interrupt their rural residential character. When I saw the notice requesting information about MCP and the amphitheater, it occurred to me that this was a real mission creep, to say the least, of what that council intended. Now, councils can change the will of the previous council quite nicely, no problem at all. But I think the letter to the editor that I wrote was referenced already. I have copies for all of you if you'd like to have it. If you don't get to Ben Franklin, Georgia probably would take your subscription. But in any event, this project, according to the budget now, I think is coming up on about 3 mills of taxes at a time when certainly the population generally is stressed because of inflationary pressures and so forth. I think you all sat through a public hearing for conditional use. Council can excuse itself from conditional use requirements like noise surveys, light surveys, traffic surveys, if they wish. But why would you do that? Your first obligation is the safety of the community, and safety does involve the capacity of roads. I have yet to hear what the true capacity of this amphitheater is. When I first heard about it, I thought it was kind of a little building that would substitute for the stage that we used to erect temporarily for community days. And so it seemed like a reasonable thing. Now it seems like you're doing a regional park and a lot of other things that are well beyond the idea of a community park for Murraysville residents. So I'm asking you, as a prior member of council, to look at this and put some good project management skills to this thing so it isn't hanging ornaments on a Christmas tree. What are the objectives? How are you going to know that you meet them? How do you get there and how much it's going to cost? And how are you going to finance it? I think referring it to the Parks and Rec Commission, certainly a laudable thing to do, but wouldn't you expect them to be somewhat of an echo chamber since this is something that they developed? I think a public airing of what's going on, how much it's going to cost in a real concerted, orderly, planned fashion is needed.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
a public hearing.
Pass through the time that we give out, so.
Well, I appreciate that, Tony, and like I said, a recovering politician can get a little deference every now and again. So,
thank you very much.
The other thing is, hey, let's account for these in-kind services that are already being expended. Thank you.
Next, we have liaison comments.
Tony, I might as well go first.
Might as well, Matt.
Since this is a topic of conversation. So, the Parks and Recreation Board has met extensively and looked very closely at every aspect from the infancy planning stages through the budgeting of the amphitheater. Many questions have been asked and still are ongoing. We're going to have a recommendation that will be read due to the fact that Dane was not able to be here tonight and due to the fact that there were a lot of public questions around the amphitheater, the budget of it, the design of it, the impact it will have. All of that has been taken into consideration, and we're getting answers and have answers. I mean, we have answers, but we're putting together the answers to all of that. So we are going to have a discussion around that at the January 18th meeting, where the Parks and Recreation's full recommendation will be read as to what that is and what the vision and what it's going to be. So we thought that was the best way to. We didn't want to quickly do something to where, a lot of people have had a lot of questions, and we want to make sure that they're all answered and that we're comfortable with that. So that's the plan that we had moving forward, if that's okay with everyone.
Very good. Thank you.
Is January 18th a regular one of our meetings?
Yeah, so our meeting is the 2nd of January is the reorganization meeting. Our meetings would normally be on the 4th and the 18th. But our reorganization meeting is Monday the 2nd, and then the first regular meeting will be the 18th. And we didn't want to do it at the reorganization meeting. There's a lot that goes on there, so we're going to do it at the first regular January meeting. Nothing is moving forward at all. There's no projects happening in regards to the amphitheater between now and then. Due to the winter being here, everything is on hold, so we're not holding anything up. We're not stopping anything. Nothing is happening, so until this is all discussed and decided on. So that's it.
Thank you. Jamie.
The school board met this Monday, December 5th, for the regular board meeting and the committee of the whole. The only thing I really think that would concern the citizens is they are looking to to limit any tax increase for the 23-24 fiscal year to the District Act 1 index of 4.1%, which equates to about 4.36 mils. And still projecting a $500,000 deficit, which they are looking to use the unassigned fund balance to cover. But the unassigned fund balance is dwindling. So. Next meeting's January. Yep.
For me, the Medic 1 meets the 15th of this month, so I'll have a report then. Carl?
Planning Commission meets next Tuesday, and the Park and Recreation Foundation meeting is on the 15th of this month. So nothing right now.
Jason?
Library met last Thursday. They would like to thank the community for all the support during the centennial year. We're still looking for. They are still looking for a board member. We have 3 applications, and we'll be interviewing those candidates soon. So if anyone else is interested, please get your application in. And this past Monday, I attended the Jingles and Gingerbread program. I think you did too, Mayor, and that was very well attended and got great reviews. They wanted me to mention a few events. The AAUW Speaker Series is December 8th. That's tomorrow at 10 a.m. And Dog Reading Pals is December 9th, 4 to 5. Teen Advisory Board meets December 13th. At 5 p.m. and the Teen Writing Club meets December 13th at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
Hey, Tony, real quick, I had one missing thing. So Mayor hit on any of the stuff that's going on for the Recreation Department, but we just last week had the Santa at Sardis. Unfortunately, there was ungodly rain for 2 days prior to that. So thank you to Bill and the Public Works for putting the big fire together. The Sardis Fire Department's going to use that as a training because we were not able to go out in the field and do everything. But Carly and her team moved the Santa part over to the fire department. So thanks to Sardis Fire Hall for kind of opening up to let us use that, and we were able to have Santa. There were lots of kids there, and it went very well. So just wanted to thank everyone for that. That's it.
Okay. Nothing on administrative? Engineering? Okay, community development. Austin Executive Park. Nothing?
Jim, were you going to address that?
Parks, Public Works, and Parks? Nothing? Okay.
11A Fusting.
Westing's Executive Park, was it?
No, it's scheduled for the 21st.
Okay. Okay, council action items. Can I have a motion on 13A?
I'd like to consider motion to consider authorization to advertise ordinance number 1065-22, the tax 2023 tax ordinance setting the tax rate for the calendar year 2023.
Second.
Jason and Matt.
Okay, this ordinance is required to be advertised and approved prior to the adoption of the budget that will take place at the next meeting. The tax rate is staying the same as 2022, and the allocation of the taxes are also remaining the same for all of the funds that are currently in the budget.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 13B.
Make a motion to consider authorization to advertise ordinance number 1066-22, the 2023 salary ordinance establishing compensation and salary ranges for the 2023 calendar year.
Second the motion.
Thank you, Carl. And Matt.
This additionally is required to be advertised before it goes for motion for approval. So this is to authorize the advertisement to take place. The annual salary ordinance establishes the salary range and the numbers of positions available for the municipal employees. Overall, the salary budget reflects the 8.7, which is the cost of living increase that was set forth by the Social Security Administration for 2023, which is the prior practice that we've done. So this will be a motion for advertisement, so it will be open for the public to come in and view these documents.
Any comments?
Let me add just one other item for council to be aware. In your packet of documents that were provided, there was one salary for the finance director position that was omitted, that was added in. That salary is commensurate with the other salaries. It will be receiving the same cost of living increase pursuant to the prior year salary. So the 2022 salary plus the cost of living increase as the other employees received as well. But that was omitted from the document, and so I wanted to make council aware that that was added in. And as you are aware, I received a question from a council member earlier today, so just to clarify, the community development director position will be a part-time position and it will be an hourly position. I mistakenly advised at one point over the past couple of weeks that it was going to be a salary position. That was incorrect. Today we kind of pinned everything down and got to the bottom of the position itself. So as you know, Mr. Morrison will be filling that role. He will be an hourly employee and submitting an hourly timesheet and compensated accordingly. So those are the two adjustments from the salary figures you have in your packets.
Okay.
Michael, just as a question, as far as the part-time, any estimate of hours per week or hours per month or anything like that?
Hours per week are estimated to be between 16 and 24.
Okay.
Any other questions? No. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, and Michael.
Okay, community development. We have anybody with that? No community development? Engineering.
Consider approval of resolution number 767-22, authorizing staff to file a Department of Community and Economic Development application with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to complete 4 stormwater basin retrofits at the Fair Oaks Basin, Mallard Landing Basin, Bartlett Court Basin, and Les Chateaux Basin in the amount of $212,950, and a commitment matching share of funds in the amount of $31,942.50.
Second.
Thank you, Jason. Carl?
Yes, we'd like to submit a grant application to the DCD to do these repairs that were just mentioned. There is a 15% match, so the amount contemplated there has been budgeted for the 2023 calendar year. So we do have the funds available in the budget to meet the matching requirement.
Any questions? No. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That'll pass. Okay, I need a motion for 16A.
Make a motion to consider awarding bids for the sale of used municipal vehicles and garage doors.
Second.
Matt and Jamie, thank you. Paul?
Good evening, or night, I guess it is now. What we're asking for tonight is to get your nod to award the vehicles and building material that we had on auction. Last Monday we opened, or the auction had closed, and we did very well. Throughout the two vehicles, the broken light plant and the garage doors, we were able to bring in revenue of $94,116. So all we need now is a motion to award the bids.
Any questions, anybody?
What's the amount again, Bill?
$94,116, I believe. Yes, sir.
Okay.
All in favor? Say aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good motion here.
Any old business? Mr. Nestico?
No items of old business.
Any new business? Mr. Nestico?
Yes, sir.
No executive session tonight?
Unless you'd like to have one.
Need one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. Third.